we're going to learn the difference between content versus process. And this is really what makes timeline therapy work. Process is related to steps, and content is related to the story. So the rule in timeline therapy is to say no to content. Please write that down. Say no to content. The content is the story. So the rule in timeline therapy is there is no stories. There is no explanation. And the importance of this is if you don't run a story, if you don't share the content, you preserve your dignity. Nobody knows what happened to you. You don't have to tell the story. And remember, every time you tell the story becomes bigger in your mind and it's harder to overcome. So I want you to think about this. When you go to the gym and when you repeatedly pick up weights, what happens to the size of your muscle? When you do weights, does your muscle get smaller or does it get bigger? It gets bigger, doesn't it? And the same is true for painful memories. The more you think about them, the more they grow. And every time you talk about them, every time you discuss them, they actually become stronger. Essentially, what you're doing is you're fueling them and you add another link in your gestalt. The reason why you're feeling pain today is because you've played these memories over consciously or unconsciously hundreds of times. Now, your mind doesn't know the difference between something that's happened and something that you vividly imagine. So an event might have happened to you once, like as we said with Akma, her brother died in a motorbike accident, but she might have played this memory over and over in her mind hundreds of times every year. And if it happened a few years ago, she might have played this incident 500 or 1,000 times over in her mind. And the more that she plays it, the more that she thinks about it, the bigger the memory becomes. Is that making sense? So instead of being a victim once of that incident, she might be a victim 1,000 times. And your mind doesn't know the difference between what's happened once in reality and what you imagine 1,000 times. Are you with me so far? Sometimes you might have an argument with a loved one or somebody that you care about. Have you had an argument and then you've lost sleep about it and you've thought about it and you replay what was said and how it was said and all of a sudden you're awake all night? Has that happened to you before? Now, every time you play that scenario over and over in your mind thinks it's happened 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 100 or 1,000 times. And we become a victim of our imagination. Is that making sense? Give me a wave. Excellent. Now, as timeline therapy practitioners, you are nice people, but you don't want to listen to content. And the reason why we don't want people telling their stories is we care for them. And the story doesn't matter when it comes to timeline therapy. As the coach, as the therapist, you don't need to know the story to help your client overcome the painful memories. The mind works very different. And when we follow the scripts in timeline therapy, you'll be able to guide your client through the process. So I want you to remember, we are nice people. You're a nice person, but we don't listen to the story. What are we going to say, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to say no to the story. Can you promise me that? If somebody tries to tell a story, just put your hand up to the screen like this. Stop. I don't need to know the details. And when they say it's a good story and I want to tell you, what are you going to do? No. We care about you and we don't care about your story. The reason is it's not healthy for you to tell your story. So in timeline therapy, we have a rule: say no to content. We say no to the story and we just follow the process. We follow the steps.